The chamber of the Sovereign Council had been designed to make supplicants feel small. Pillars of pale stone rose into shadow where, somewhere far above, recording drones drifted like patient insects. The floor was a single polished disc, and at its center stood a woman in a dark gray suit, her hands folded in front of her, her chin level. Ambassador Myra Vance was 41 years old. She had buried two brothers in the Outer Rim Wars. She was not a small woman, but here, beneath the elevated tiers of 200 alien delegates, she looked like a single grain of salt on a black plate. Earth, intoned the High Adjudicator, a long-necked being whose voice came out filtered through a translation collar. You stand accused of unprovoked aggression upon Council patrol assets in the Vesca corridor. My government has provided the engagement logs, Vance answered. Her voice carried evenly across the polished floor. Your patrol fired first. We retaliated. We have offered restitution. A wet laugh rippled through the upper tiers. The delegate from the Drenix Collective, a creature with too many shoulders, rose from his cushion. Restitution. The little mammals on their wet rock wish to discuss restitution, as though their opinion holds weight. Vance did not flinch. She had been trained for this. She had also been told before boarding the diplomatic shuttle that she might not come home. This council, she continued, has known Earth for 180 standard years. In that time, we have signed every accord placed before us. We have surrendered patents. We have accepted unfavorable trade tariffs. We have absorbed insult after insult while building no fleet of consequence. I ask the adjudicator, at what point does compliance become evidence of sincerity? It does not, the adjudicator replied, and the chamber laughed. The Drenix delegate spread his arms in mock theatricality. Compliance is what prey offers. Sincerity is what equals exchange. A second voice cut in, smoother, older. Councillor Velkarash of the Sovereign Inner Ring rose from her seat. Her skin was the color of wet bark, her eyes pale gold. She was the most dangerous person in the chamber, and everyone knew it. Ambassador Vance, she said almost gently, the matter before us is not your patrol incident. The matter is the persistent rumor, for it is only rumor, that Earth maintains hidden military capabilities far in excess of declared inventory. The Council has decided this rumor must end. Today. Vance felt the shape of the trap close around her ankles. She did not move. Earth has 72 standard hours, Velkarash continued, to admit 100 Council inspectors to every orbital facility, every lunar installation, every outpost from Sol to the Kuiper boundary. Refusal will be considered a declaration of intent. The combined fleet of 7 sovereign signatories has been prepositioned. They will enter Sol space at the conclusion of the deadline. Whether they do so as guests or as a corrective force depends upon your government. A long, slow silence followed. The recording drones drifted closer. Vance lifted her chin a fraction higher. I will carry your terms to my people, Counselor. I would only ask one courtesy in return. Name it. That when this is over, the Council remembers who issued the first threat. The chamber broke into open, derisive laughter. Velkarash did not laugh. She tilted her head, studying Vance the way a vet studies a small animal that has bitten the hand reaching to help it. Go home, Ambassador, the counselor said quietly. Comfort your species while there is time. Vance turned. Her heels echoed off the polished floor as she walked out, and every delegate she passed laughed louder, as though volume could prove they were not afraid of the woman in the gray suit, of the wet rock she came from, or of the rumor they had been so eager to silence. In the corridor outside, she activated her wrist transmitter and spoke 3 words to a man waiting half a galaxy away. Tell the general, she said, we have been given the excuse. Part 2, the quiet answer. The room beneath the Pacific had no name. On official documentation, it appeared as a deep-sea geothermal research facility. In practice, it sat 1.5 kilometers below the seabed and had walls thick enough to survive things that did not officially exist. General Aris Holloway watched the recording of Ambassador Vance's chamber appearance for the fourth time. He paused on the moment her chin lifted after the threat. He let the still image hold. "That woman," he said, to no one in particular, "deserves a medal cast from the bones of the people who laughed at her." Around the circular table sat 11 figures. 6 wore uniforms of various services. 3 wore civilian clothing. 2 wore lab coats. The older of them, Dr. Alina Brennan, looked as if she had not slept in a calendar year. "The Council fleet positions are confirmed," said the Naval Intelligence Chief. 42 Capital class, 8 carriers, 312 escorts, pre-staged at the Bardon jump point. They mean it. "They have always meant it," Holloway said. "They have wanted an excuse to come for us since we first invented an engine. Vance gave them one because we let her, because we had to know how far they'd go." He looked around the table. His face was an old face, sun-creased, with one cheek bearing a faded scar from a war the public had been told ended in negotiation. "The question on this table," he said, "is whether we open the vault." Silence. The civilian to his left, the director of continuity, exhaled through her nose. "If we open it, we cannot close it again. The galaxy will know what we have. Every assumption they hold about us dies in a single afternoon." "They are already dead," Holloway replied. "They died the moment Counselor Velkarash said combined fleet. If we comply, they board our cities. They confiscate Brennan's lab. They take the vault from us in installments wearing white gloves. If we resist with declared forces only, we lose. The vault was made for this moment. It has always been made for this moment." Dr. Brennan finally spoke. Her voice was hoarse and quiet. "General, with respect, the vault was not made for anything by us. It was made by something else. We are tenants. The day we use it, really use it, is the day the galaxy stops being a place we hide inside and starts being a place we are responsible for." "I am aware, Doctor." "Then I want it on the record that I said it." "It is on the record," Holloway nodded. "Anything else, Doctor?" Brennan was silent a long moment. Then she said, "The keepers before us, the ones who taught us to read the consoles, they wrote one warning across every entry hatch. Do you know what it says?" "Tell the room." She looked around the table. "It says, 'The ships do not wake for fear. They wake for stewardship.' The translation is approximate, but the meaning is clear. If we open them out of panic, they may refuse us. If we open them because we have decided to take responsibility for the small worlds that the Council has been bullying since before we had language, they will rise." A long pause. Holloway looked at each face in turn. "Show of hands," he said. "Open the doors." 11 hands rose. Holloway's came up last. He held his there for a moment, the way a man holds a candle at a funeral. "All right," he said. "Brennan, your team begins primer sequence on Lunar Site 1, Jovian Site 2, and Kuiper Site 4. Bring up the Pacific Cradle as well. Quietly, at first. Let them see nothing on long range until the deadline expires." "Yes, General." "Vance is to remain in plain view of Council surveillance. They are to believe we are panicking. Let them write the next 2 days as our humiliation. When the deadline ends, every Council vessel in Sol is to receive a single transmission from this room. After that, no further communication until they decide to talk to us like equals, or until there is no one left to talk." He stood, the room stood with him. Far above their heads, miles of dark water muffled the world. "In 71 hours, Holloway said, the galaxy meets its tenets." Part 3, Sol's Doorstep. The Council Armada translated into Sol space at the edge of the heliopause and arranged itself with parade ground precision. 42 capital ships formed a great inverted bowl, escorts threaded between them like beads on wire, carriers settled into the second rank with their fighter bays already cycling. It was, by any standard the galaxy used, an overwhelming display. Admiral Tavan Skar of the Drenix battle fleet stood at the central bridge of the flagship Iron Vow and felt a deep, satisfied warmth in the cavity behind his sternum. He had wanted this his entire career. 3 decades of border patrols against species that begged before he fired. Now, finally, a real campaign, a real species. A real story to tell his clutchmates. Long-range scans complete, Admiral, reported his sensor officer. Earth orbital defenses are at declared strength. No anomalies, no hidden mass. Local commercial traffic has been recalled to inner planets. They are bracing. Of course they are bracing. They are not stupid. Skar straightened his coat. Open a channel to Earth Command. Let the small mammals speak their last. The channel opened. On Skar's display appeared a man in a uniform without medals. Older, sun-creased, eyes the color of cold metal. This is General Aris Holloway, Earth Defense Coordinator. Identify. Admiral Tavan Skar of the Sovereign Council Combined Fleet. You have not opened your orbital facilities to inspection. The deadline has expired. You will surrender all military installations and submit your government to administration within 1 standard hour, or this fleet will enforce the order. Holloway did not blink. Admiral, I am going to offer you something I have not offered anyone in 11 years, a direct warning. How charming. My government has decided you are not here to inspect. You are here to occupy. You will turn your ships around and depart Sol space. You will carry a message to your council that the previous arrangement, the one in which you bully smaller systems while we watch, has ended. Skar laughed. It was a wet, full-throated laugh that the bridge crew echoed. And if we do not, then you will discover, Holloway said, what we have been quiet about. Skar leaned forward, almost amused. Tell me, General, are you about to threaten me with a hidden fleet? Because we have scanned this system to the gravel. We know what you have. We have known for longer than you have been alive. Holloway looked at him for a long moment. There was no anger in his face. There was something far worse, patience. You scanned what we wanted you to scan, Admiral. I will say it one last time. Leave. Negative, General. My orders are clear. You have 1 hour. Then we are done speaking, Holloway said and reached out a frame. The channel cut. Skar settled back into his command throne. Begin orbital approach. Carrier wings to launch posture, targeting solutions on all declared defense platforms. We will be done before the cycle ends. But across the bridge, his sensor officer was no longer at attention. The officer was hunched over the long-range readouts, 3 of his limbs trembling, his crest flattened against his skull. Admiral, the officer said, his voice was thin. Admiral, I need you to look at this. What? The moon, Admiral, their moon. Skar turned toward the main display. Earth's moon, that dead gray ball, was no longer geologically silent. Across its surface, hairline fractures of pale light had begun to glow. They formed patterns. Patterns that traced shapes far too large to be artificial structures and far too geometric to be natural. The grid extended for hundreds of kilometers. Sensors are reporting mass shifts, the officer whispered. Subsurface mass shifts. Something is moving inside the moon, Admiral. Something the size of. He stopped because the sensor reading updated, and his translator could not find the word. On Skar's display, deeper feeds began to arrive. Jupiter's storm bands had begun to spin in the wrong directions. The dark hemisphere of Pluto was lit by lines of pale green light. The Pacific Ocean on the small blue world ahead was glowing from beneath. Tavan Skar, who had laughed only moments before, set his palm flat on the console and said, in a voice he did not recognize as his own, "What is happening?" And then the lunar surface broke open. Part 4. What WAKES? It did not happen the way the bridge crew expected. There was no explosion. The moon did not crack. The pale grid of light pulsed once like a held breath, and then the regolith above the largest sector simply moved. Not blasted. Moved. A circular plate of moon rock the size of a small continent rose on invisible supports, tilted and slid sideways with the dignity of a great door swung open by an unhurried hand. Beneath it, in the cavity that had been hidden since before any species on the Iron Vow's bridge had invented fire, lay something. The censor officer of the Iron Vow tried to assign a class to it, and his console rejected every option. The shape was wrong for a ship. It was wrong for a station. It had no engines visible. It had no weapons visible. It was a long, smooth, dark spindle 30 kilometers in length, and around its hull faint pale lines traced patterns that looked disturbingly like writing in a language the translation systems could not even attempt to render. It rose out of the lunar shell without thrust. It simply rose. Behind it came a second, then a third. They emerged in formation the way old men leave a cathedral. On Jupiter, the storms parted. Whatever had been hiding inside the gas bands for millennia separated from the planet's mantle of cloud and ascended on no engines anyone could read. These were larger, squat, hexagonal things, each one bristling with arrays of dark spines. 8 of them. They turned, almost lazily, to face inward toward the Council fleet. On the dark face of Pluto, segments of the surface peeled back like petals of frost, and a single object rose. Only one. It was not large. It was no larger than a Council frigate. But the long-range sensor crew on the Iron Vow watched its emergence, and 3 of them began to scream because the shape of it matched, with a precision impossible to dismiss as coincidence, the central icon of the Drennick's founding religion, the Wandering Builder. The thing their grandmothers had warned them never to draw with a steady hand, because if you drew it correctly, it would notice you. Admiral Tavan Skar stared at his displays. "Identify," he said. "Identify those vessels." They are not in any registry, Admiral. Compared to historical archives, all historical archives, go back as far as we have. The censor officer's claws shook on his console. He ran the search. The bridge held its breath. The result came back in a queue of red error messages, and then a single hit, a single match. The officer's voice, when it came, was very small. "Admiral, the closest archival match is," he stopped, swallowed, "is from the Drennick's Prestellar Mythography Archive, the illustrations of the Wandering Builder cycle. The vessels match the temple iconography to within a tolerance of 3%. "That is mythology," Skar whispered. "That is children's mythology." "Yes, Admiral." "Show me Earth." The display swung. Earth filled the screen, the small blue world they had come to discipline. Across the Pacific Ocean, an enormous circle of water was rising, not in a wave, not in a column, but in a smooth bowl of displacement, as though something the size of a country were ascending from beneath the seafloor without disturbing the surface tension. The water lifted, peeled away in sheets, and revealed a hull. The hull was black. It was longer than any naval asset in the Council's collective inventory. It bore the same pale linework as the others. Across the bridge, the religious officer of the Iron Vow, every Drennick's capital ship carried one, sank to her knees and began to recite the liturgy of return. She did not stop. She would not stop, even when Skar shouted her name. A new channel opened on the main display. General Aris Holloway again, same uniform, same face. "Admiral Skar," he said, "I told you we had been quiet about something. I want you to look at what is in front of you, and I want you to understand what you are seeing before I speak again." Skar could not speak. Holloway waited a full 10 seconds. Then he said, "These ships are not ours. They were here before us. We found them. We learned to read their walls. We have been the keepers of this inheritance for a length of time you would not believe. You came to my system to teach me my place. So I am teaching you instead where you stand on the actual ladder of this galaxy." The lunar spindles turned in formation toward the Council fleet. "Last warning, Admiral." Skar opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "All vessels," he croaked, "evasive, evasive." He did not finish the order. Part 5, the recognition. It was the religious officer who saved the Iron Vows Bridge from total breakdown, and she did so by accident. She had finished the third stanza of the Liturgy of Return and reached the part of the recitation where the worshipper is required to name the builder by their three honor titles. She named them aloud, in high Drenix, her voice carrying through the bridge speakers, because she had not bothered to disengage her command collar. The pale lines along the hulls of the lunar spindles pulsed once in answer. Not in synchrony with each other, in synchrony with her, with the rhythm of her recitation. Every Drenix on the bridge of the Iron Vow felt the marrow inside their bones go cold at the same moment. 3 of them dropped to their knees beside the religious officer and joined her. 2 more covered their mouths with their hands, as if to keep something from escaping. "Admiral," whispered the censor officer, who was not Drenix but Velnari and therefore unprotected by faith. "Admiral, please, please give an order." Scar could not, his throat had closed. On the main display, the channel from Earth had not closed. General Holloway was still there, watching them. He let them have their moment. He did not interrupt. When the religious officer's recitation reached its natural breath pause, only then did Holloway speak again. "Admiral, I see your faith chamber has identified the design language. That will save us some time. I am going to tell you the rest of the truth, and you are going to take it back to your council. Pay attention." Scar's translator collar carried the words as if from a great distance. "We did not build these ships. Your mythologies are not wrong. There were builders before any of us, before my species had bone, before yours had shells. They left their fleets behind. Most of them they hid in the gas giants and the ice belts of every system they had touched. On a great many worlds they left nothing. On a small number of worlds they left everything. Earth is one of those worlds." Why Scar managed? "We do not know, we have theories. None of them flatter us. What we know is this: they left consoles we could learn to read. They left manuals in their way. They left rules. We have been the caretakers of this inheritance for longer than your council has had a flag. We never built a declared fleet because we never needed one." Scar found, somewhere in the wreckage of his composure, an old officer's reflex. "Then why reveal it now?" "Because you decided to come here and take us apart. Because your council has spent a century pressing on smaller species who do not have what we have. Because the inheritance is conditional. The ships wake for stewardship. The rule is in their walls. The builders left a job, Admiral. We have decided to begin doing it." The bridge of the Iron Vow had become a quiet place. Officers who had been mocking small mammals an hour earlier sat in their seats and looked at the lunar formation on the main display and did not speak. Counselor Velkarash's face appeared on a second channel, fed in from her command station 3 jumps away. Her bark-colored skin had gone the wrong shade. Her gold eyes were enormous. "General Holloway," she said, her voice was tight. "There is no need for a demonstration. The fleet will withdraw. We will convene a session of—" "Counselor," Holloway said gently, and Velkarash flinched at the gentleness. "I gave Admiral Scar his last warning 10 standard minutes ago. The fleet is still in attack posture. The carriers are still cycling. You will note, please, that I have not yet ordered a single shot. I would like to make the choice the Council made very clear to history." "General, I am instructing the fleet to—" "Then instruct them faster, Counselor. I will not interrupt you." The channel from Velkarash filled with shouted orders. The Drenix combined fleet began to break formation, the great inverted bowl unraveling as escorts wheeled for retreat and capital ships scrambled to bring their main drives online. It was too slow. On the Iron Vows Bridge, the censor officer watched the inherited spindles in lunar orbit. He watched the pale linework along their hulls brighten by one slow increment. He turned to Admiral Scar, and the words that left his mouth were the last he would speak in his career. "Admiral, they are aiming." Part 6, The Reckoning. It was not a battle. Battles imply two parties exchanging damage. What happened in the next 4 standard minutes was a correction. The first inherited spindle from lunar orbit released a single pale lance of light. It was not a beam in any sense the Council fleet understood. It did not travel as projectile or pulse. It did not heat the air it passed through. The sensor record, when it was studied months later by frightened analysts on 6 worlds, showed only that the volume of space between the lunar spindle and the Council destroyer Vow of 8 simply ceased to contain the destroyer. The ship was not blown apart. It did not burn. The mass that had been a kilometer-long warship a moment before was no longer there, and the lance continued past the empty space and dimmed and was gone. 5,000 Drenix crew, 1 blink. The second lance came from a Jovian hexagon. It crossed the orbital plane and intersected the Council carrier Throne of Drenix, a flagship larger than most cities. The carrier folded inward upon itself the way a piece of paper folds when a hand crushes it from the corners, and what came out of the folding was not wreckage. It was a small, dim sphere of gravitational distortion that drifted for a few seconds, and was then absorbed by the Jovian hexagon's outer hull as though reclaimed. The third strike was from the small ship that had risen out of Pluto, the one that matched the central icon of the Drenix founding religion. It did not fire. It tilted only a few degrees, and the Drenix escort screen, 14 frigates of the elite on her wing, went dark. Every reactor on every frigate stopped. Every drive on every frigate stopped. Every life support unit on every frigate stopped. The 14 ships continued on their last heading, silent, dead in space, their crews already asphyxiating in vessels that had become tombs in the span of a breath. 3 minutes in, 21 Council capital ships were gone or dying. Carriers were attempting to launch fighters that the inherited fleet apparently chose not to notice. The escorts that survived were beginning to scatter, jump points lighting up in panic vectors along the heliopause. Admiral Tavan Skar gripped his command throne. His religious officer had not stopped reciting. He found, distantly, that he hoped she would not stop. "General Holloway," Skar said. His voice was a husk. "General Holloway, please." The channel from Earth was still open. Holloway had not moved. He was a man in a sunlit office, watching with great care. "Yes, Admiral." "We surrender. The fleet surrenders. I surrender." "I accept your surrender, Admiral. Order your remaining ships to power down weapons and drives. Hold position. Do not attempt to jump out. The inherited vessels will not pursue a ship that holds position. They will pursue any ship that runs. Tell your captains." "Yes, General. Yes, immediately, yes." Skar's hands were trembling. He gave the order. He gave it 3 times because his voice would not come the first 2. Across the broken armada, ships began to power down. The lances ceased. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke a bridge crew. On Skar's second channel, Counselor Velkaresh had her hand pressed over her mouth. She was watching the carnage on a separate display. She was no longer speaking. Holloway waited until the last drive in the surviving armada had gone cold. Then he spoke again, and now his voice carried the weight he had been holding back for the entire conversation. "Counselor Velkaresh, Admiral Skar, the terms are these. You will withdraw what remains of this fleet to a marker buoy that I will provide. You will leave behind your dead for our recovery and return. We will treat them with honor and ship them home. You will then take a message back to the Sovereign Council in person, the both of you. The message is this." He let the silence build. "The era in which the small worlds of this galaxy answer to a council of bullies has ended today. The arrangement is finished. There will be a new arrangement. Earth will not write it alone. We will write it with the species you have been grinding under your heel for the last 100 years. You will be invited to the table. You will not chair it. You will not threaten anyone at it. If you attempt to, the inheritance you saw today will be the first courtesy I extend, and the last." Velkaresh lowered her hand from her mouth. She made the small Drenix gesture of acceptance under duress. "It will be carried, General," she said hoarsely. Then go home, Counselor, Holloway said, and tell them what you saw. Part 7, CRETKRS. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Myra Vance stood again on a polished floor beneath a vaulted chamber. This time the chamber was not the Sovereign Council's. It was a hastily prepared neutral hall on the moon of Belarus, a small world the Council had been squeezing for tribute for 6 decades. Belarus had volunteered the venue. Belarus had wept publicly when Earth accepted. Vance wore the same dark gray suit. She had refused a more formal one. She wanted the recordings to show that the woman who had been laughed at by the Sovereign Council was the same woman who now stood at the head of the room. Behind her, on a quiet display, hung a single image. It was a slow-orbit photograph of one of the lunar spindles. Pale linework, dark hull, nothing menacing about the picture, and yet every delegate in the chamber kept glancing at it as if to confirm it was still there. Vance did not begin with a flourish. "Honored delegates," she said, her voice carried without amplification. "I owe this room the truth. I will give it now, and I will not give it twice." She let her hands rest on the podium. "Humanity did not build the ships you saw at Sol. We are not their creators. We are not even their first inheritors. They were left on Earth long before our species learned to chip a stone into a useful shape. We found them buried under our oceans. We found them under our ice. We found them in places that had been sealed against weather and time and curiosity. When we were ready to read what was written on their walls, we read it. When we were ready to learn what they did, we learned it. The learning has taken us a great deal longer than our public history admits." A delegate from one of the smaller systems raised a hand. "Ambassador, why did you not reveal this earlier?" "Because, honored delegate, the ships do not wake for fear. They wake for stewardship. That is the rule on their walls, written by whoever left them. If we had revealed them out of ambition, out of pride, out of the desire to rule the way the Sovereign Council has ruled, we believe the ships would have refused us, possibly worse than refused us." A murmur ran the room. "When we revealed them, we did so because the Council came to a small world to take what was not theirs, and we decided we could no longer watch that happen elsewhere either. The inheritance has a price. The price is the job. The job is caretaking, not rule, not empire, caretaking." She paused. She looked across the room and met the eyes of a Belarusian delegate who had lost a granddaughter to a Council tariff war 3 years prior. "Earth will not occupy the Sovereign Council's seat," Vance said. "Earth will not assume the Sovereign Council's powers. Earth will sit at this table where you sit. Earth will defend the right of every species in this room to refuse the next bully who comes to your door. We will not write your laws. We will not draft your trade arrangements. We will not station fleets in your skis uninvited. But we will be watching." She let the line sit. If a powerful party returns to the old habits, if anyone, including Earth, attempts to do to a small world what the Sovereign Council attempted to do to us, the inheritance will rise. Not because Earth wills it, because the rule on the wall says it must. Silence. The Belarusian delegate stood. He was old and his coat was too thin for the chamber's chill. He cleared his throat 3 times before he could speak. "Ambassador," he said, "on behalf of my world, on behalf of the 4 worlds within a single jump of mine, I would like to ask a question." "Please." "Will you remember this speech when you are powerful?" A few delegates inhaled. The question was sharp. It was the right question. Vance did not flinch. She lowered her head briefly, not in submission, but in the small private gesture of someone acknowledging a fair test. "Honored delegate," she said, "we will not always remember. We are not better than the species that came before us. The inheritance is what we'll remember. As long as the ships remain and as long as we are honest enough to keep them, we will be held to this speech. The day Earth forgets is the day the ships choose another keeper. We have been told this. We believe it. We have arranged our laws around it." The Belarusian delegate looked at her for a long time. Then he bowed deeply in the manner of his world. Then we will believe it with you, Ambassador, he said, until you give us reason not to. He sat. The chamber rose to its feet around him, one delegation after another, until the room was a forest of standing figures. There was no applause. The species in the chamber did not share a custom of applause, but there was a low collective sound, made from 100 different throats, that translated in every delegate's earpiece as the same word. Witness. Far away in Sol space, the inherited spindles drifted in slow lunar orbit. The pale linework along their hulls had dimmed back to its resting glow. They did not move. They did not threaten. They waited, as they had waited beneath the lunar regolith for a length of time no human historian had ever been able to measure. On Earth, General Aris Holloway stood on a balcony above the Pacific. The great hull that had risen from beneath the waves 3 weeks earlier had returned, with infinite care, to its cradle on the seafloor. The ocean had closed over it like a held secret resealed. Holloway watched the water. He held a cup of cooling tea. He did not feel triumphant. He felt the weight of something he had inherited, and the weight of the children who would inherit it from him, and the weight of the warning written across every entry hatch in 3 languages, 2 of which had no living native speakers. The ships do not wake for fear, they wake for stewardship. He raised the cup. He drank. The Pacific kept the secret it had kept for 100,000 years, and would keep it again, until the next time the small worlds of the galaxy needed a keeper to remember the rule on the wall.